What is good, viewers? BBK Dragoon here with the Gold Zerg video. Today we're going to be teaching you a CC first into Marine Hellion style of play. This is very standard. This is Innovation CC first 3CC build. I know there's probably a much cleaner way to say that, but a few housekeeping things before we get into the build. Number one, thanks for everybody who's still watching. Hope the Terran build, you enjoyed it. These builds that I am now showing work all the way in Masters. The builds I'm picking are very standard, and they've been used in WCS, in GSL, in Pro League. So these are very common builds, and I'm teaching you the standard matchup per matchup builds, the things that I like. But you definitely can learn more than these builds, and you should learn more than these builds. I assume once you reach gold that you are a player who's serious about learning this game and wants to get to platinum or higher. In order to do that, yes, you can use the 15 gas expand above, but it's going to require really good scouting, exceptional micro, and really good decision making. Whereas if you start learning a build per matchup, you're going to learn the matchups better. You're going to learn why we get which tech at which times, and it's very important. So do keep that in mind if this is your first trip going up bronze to gold. So, last housekeeping thing. I got diamond in the last 2 weeks since I've seen you. Very happy about that. Diamond Terran. I can finally add that to my belt, and it's just stoked. I'm very happy. The builds that I'm using, I use in diamond. The games I'm showing today are from High Platinum and Diamond, and the build order is coming up. I would highly suggest that you write the build down before you do it, because this build requires a ton of practice. Since you have way more money than you normally would, it's fast, requires a lot of multitask, and it requires you to not lose Hellions and keep map control. With that said, I hope you enjoy this video, and I will see you next time. And the build. It will begin. Load King Sage on station. Easy AI. The build will begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Build an SCV. This is the build order for CC first 3CC TvZ style play. I know it has a better name, and it probably sounds a lot better on Imbabuilds. Build an SCV. This build gets you a 3rd command center by 24 supply, 25 supply-ish, and gives you super duper strong mid-game bio. Build an SCV. You can take it about 2 routes. You can go into Widow Mines, or you can go into Hellbats. I do not recommend going into tanks for lower league players. Tanks against TvZ requires a lot of experience. Build an SCV. When you reach the wall at 100 supply, or minerals, build a depot. Set the rally of the worker building the depot back to your minerals. Build an SCV. You absolutely will have to write this build down, because there's no way you're going to be able to look at this and do this build at the same time. You need to study it, know what comes, when it comes, and do it, because this build comes at you so fast. Build an SCV. You have huge explosion of minerals because you get a 3rd CC way sooner than you normally would. So the powering up time of this build requires a ton of work from you. It also requires good multitasking so you don't lose your Hellions. Build an SCV. If you lose the Hellions, you most likely will lose the game. The Hellions are your only source of scouting and map control for a very long time. Do not lose these, especially now after the Hellbat buff, because now you can get Hellbats way earlier. Build an SCV. You should be at 14 supply at 300 minerals. Send a worker to the top of your ramp. When you reach 400 minerals, you're going to build a CC. You need to make sure your wall off is tight, and the way we do that is by making sure you have 3 grid spaces available for the barracks. Each map is different, each choke is different. Build an SCV. You will have to practice on each map to make sure you get a tight wall off. It comes in time. Send an SCV to your wall. At 150 minerals, build a barracks. This completes your wall off. Build an SCV when you have 50 minerals. When you have the minerals, you're going to then build a gas. You should be at 16 supply. 14 CC, 15 barracks, 16 gas. That is your opener. Continue building SCVs. In this build, there will come a point at which I can no longer tell you to build all the stuff I'm building. That means depots are going to rely on you. Put 2 workers into the gas. You're going to have to work hard to stay ahead of your supply and not get supply blocked. At 18 supply, stop building SCVs. We're going to wait until the barracks finishes. Once the barracks finish, build an orbital and start a marine. When the second
CC finishes, start an orbital. Send the SCV that was building your barracks to scout the opponent, and send the SCV that was building your CC down to your natural ramp. Start that orbital on that natural now. Build a bunker at your natural and start a second marine. When you are at 100 gas, start a factory. Do not miss this timing. Drop a mule and build an SCV. Drop another mule when the second CC finishes and float that CC down to your natural.
Upgrade complete.
Lift your barracks and place your barracks at the wall and build a reactor when you have 50 gas on that barracks. You should scout the opponent now. You're looking for a third base. You're looking for gas counts if he'll let you get in. Start a depot at the top of your wall. Make sure you get that reactor on your barracks. Do not forget it. Continue SCV production when available. When you have 400 minerals, begin a CC in your base. That's the third CC. You should now have 2 orbitals, 1 CC building, a reactor building on your barracks. You can float your factory over to your barracks in preparation to swap it for the factory. Build a depot at your wall. These 2 marines are your only defense for now, so you need to have that bunker done and the wall off beginning. You can drop your mules for minerals. Keep building SCVs. Do not oversaturate your main. Swap the barracks in the factory. Build 2 Hellions and start a tech lab on your barracks. Build another depot at your wall. Continuous SCV production. Build 2 more Hellions.
Add-on complete.
Start a marine and begin stim pack. Start another depot at your wall. Once again, do not lose these Hellions. Start an orbital with the CC that just completed, and begin a gas between 43 and 45 supply. Right around the 42 to 45 mark is fine. Build 2 more Hellions. You should have 4 Hellions now. Build another marine. You should have 3 marines now. Keep dropping mules for minerals. Put 2 workers into the gas, start 2 engineering bays, and when you have the minerals, buy your 3rd and 4th gas at your natural.
Upgrade complete.
When these Hellions finish, you are going to swap the factory off of the reactor. Build another reactor with that factory and start 2 barracks. 1 on the reactor and 1 that is naked. Keep building marines. Use these Hellions to scout for a 3rd base. Do harass against the drones if possible. Do not lose these. Start +1/+1. Depots are now on you. Stay ahead of supply. Put your workers into gas at your natural. You should have already put the workers into the gas in your main if you didn't. Keep building SCVs.
Add-on complete.
When the reactor on the factory finishes, build another reactor on your factory. Start a starport and begin 2 more barracks. This will bring you to a total of 5 barracks. Your factory is your reactor slave. It is here to make lots of reactors. Put the barracks that just finished onto the reactor that the factory previously built. When your +1/+1 is halfway done, start an armory. You may float your 3rd CC to your minerals to the 3rd CC patch whenever you would like past 8 minutes. Start combat shield. When you float your 3rd CC over is based upon what your opponent is doing. If he's playing standard Zerg style, you can float it as early as 8 minutes.
Add-on.
If you take it too early, though, you may not be able to defend it, and you may lose precious mining time. Keep building marines during this whole process. When the factory finishes its reactor, flip the starport onto that reactor, start another reactor on the factory, and start 2 reactors on the barracks that are just finishing. Transfer workers to the 3rd base. Build marauders and marines. When your armory completes, transform your Hellions into Hellbats. That way your medevacs can heal them. When +1/+1 finishes, start 2/2 immediately. It's crucial. Add 3 more barracks, bringing you to a total of 8 barracks, and start another factory. You should now have 8 barracks, 3 building, 2 factories, 1 building. Start 2 medevacs, and keep the medevac production consistent. Start Hellbat production if that's the route you want to go, or start Widowmine production if that's the route you want to go. Keep Marine, Marauder, Medevac, and your choice of tech production going, if it's Hellbats or if it's Widowmines. Continuous. At this point, start pushing out across the map to pressure your opponent's third base. Do not engage on creep. Your goal is to clear creep. Be ready to split. Do not lose this army. I supply block because at this point in the build, it's very hard to stay ahead in supply. Do not be afraid to use cooldowns, but at this point in the game, all of your energy is being saved to clear creep tumors. Be aware that if your opponent is playing standard Lingbane Muta, that you will need missile turrets at each of your bases. Do not overcommit, but at least have enough to buy your army some time. Keep your reinforcements near home, that way if he does a large Muta push, you do not lose your main base or your upgrades. 2-2 is nearing complete. When 2-2 finishes, you have an extremely powerful timing. And now it's the time to pressure the Zerg's third or fourth base over and over and over with 2-2 bio. Once you reach 3-3 bio, you have an even bigger advantage. If you do not destroy the Zerg, though, before he reaches Ultralisk tech, this build is very hard. Terran needs to keep the Zerg on the mid-game tech as long as possible. Zerg's mass Ultralisk fully upgraded Ultralisks are very hard to deal with bio, unless you prepare for it perfectly and have a ton of Marauders and really great kiting. When 2-2 finishes, start 3-3. At this point, you can start a 4th command center. You can also get more barracks when you would like. Do not overbuy barracks, though. If you can't afford to reinforce, there's no point. That's the build. It's very weak against early Roach all-ins. If you see early Roach all-ins coming, or you detect it, you prepare with more bunkers, tanks, and Marauders. You can get any combination of those 3. But I won't lie to you, it's very hard to stop Roach pressures until you're really experienced in this matchup. And I still lose to early Roach pressure. The standard, though, is for Zergs, if they're playing macro, to take an early third hatch. The Zerg always wants to be 1 base up from the Terran. If he is playing standard Zerg, then be happy, because you're going to do a lot of damage in the mid-game and probably win a lot of your games. This TvZ requires a lot of micro. You need to keep your Hellbats in the front, you need to keep your Marauders in the front, and you absolutely must split your units against Ling and Bane. Against mid-game and late-game Roaches, it's a game of math and upgrades. You need a larger arc, and you usually need more units to beat a mass Roach or Hydralisk style of play. When you reach the later portions of the game, begin adding more and more command centers, because over time we can phase out more SCVs and just rely on our mules. And that is the 3CC build. It's on Imbabuilds. It was played all the time. It still is played very often. I talk a little bit about the Reaper Hellion expand that's quite popular now. In Korea, they're playing a lot of 2-base Hellbat timings right now, because Hellbats are very good since we no longer require the transformation servo upgrade. Good luck with this build. You absolutely must practice it. It requires the most multitask, and also it's the fastest powering up build, so it's going to take a lot of time. There's no way you're going to be able to listen to this video and do it on the first 2 or 3 tries. It's going to take a lot of knowledge of when to get what. I would suggest watching this, writing down on a notepad what you need to get and when, and then beginning to practice it in stages. Start with the first 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 4 minutes, which means you're going to be playing it out repetitively, but it's crucial. If you do not upgrade and do the buildings in time and spend your money on time, this build will be completely ineffective. so it requires a ton from you. Pressure the Zergs 3rd and 4th, don't engage on creep, standard stuff with this matchup. But it's a really fun build, teaches you the standard stuff, 8 barracks, 2 factories, 1 starports, and that's that. So here's a platinum game from a season that's probably pretty long ago. This was probably last August? No, maybe last October even, September-ish range. This is the 3cc build. This is about as standard in TvZ as you can get. If there was a 1-Rax fast expand of TvZ, it would be the CC first build. People have been doing it since Wings of Liberty. It's been since modified for Heart of the Swarm, in which case you can use Widow Mines or Hellbats. And I picked this game because this is pre-Hellbat buff. If you didn't know, the Hellbat just got an enormous buff where they no longer require transformation servo upgrade to be researched in order for you to switch Hellions into Hellbats. This has since led Terran into, especially in Pro League, a ton of Terran players doing 2-base Hellbat timings. Even TvZ at Home Story Cup was jokingly saying that Hellbats are OP right now. So I'm showing the Widowmine style because you can go 2 different routes with your factory tech. You can go into Widowmines or Hellbats. I already said I don't recommend going into tanks for specific reasons that are, tanks are difficult because it's a very positioning heavy style, and you have to have a lot of experience with this matchup in order to do well with tanks. That's been my experience. Tanks can be used to hold early roaches because Widowmines are atrocious against roaches, and Hellbats aren't very good against roaches either. Widowmines are super fun. This is pre-Widowmine nerf. If you didn't know, the Widowmine was nerfed last... When was it, man? It's probably earlier this year, or it was late last year. I can't remember what it was, but they reduced the radius and some damage values. I know the radius is true. I'm not sure about the damage, but it's no longer what it used to be. Widowmines are still very good, but a lot of Zerg players are getting privy to it. In this game, I'm going for Widowmines because I really, really like Widowmines, especially against players who go mass Baneling, which a lot of Zergs do. A lot of Zergs don't micro them the way that they should. Hellbats are really good right now, and I would suggest it too, because it will require less micro from you. Your goal with Widowmines, as you can see, is to try and get the Zerg to run off of his creep into your Widowmines. It will lead to you trading way more effectively if the Zerg is continually going over the Widowmines. Widowmines with 2 factories are very easy to reinforce, and in this matchup and in this style of play, you're going to be reinforcing over and over. Mutalisks are expensive, and if he makes the mistake of losing a lot of Mutalisks, you can outright win the game. In this match, I took my 4th base at the actual 4th mineral patch, without getting missile turrets up there for defense, and without having any units really ready to defend it from Mutalisks. That's a mistake. The Zerg could have easily taken advantage of that. He will attack the 4th base here, but I'm showing you this portion to embed in your memory. Build your CC at your natural, your 4th CC, then float it to the minerals. And when you take that 4th CC, make sure you get defenses down immediately with your SCVs. Even if it's just 1 or 2 missile turrets, just enough stuff to keep it from being sniped by the Mutalisks. Also, you really want to force the Zerg into choke points like this. If you have the ability to spread your units, or to make it so he can't get surrounds on your units, you're going to have a good time. Now, in this case, he gets desperate. He engaged through a choke. Notice how I made that choke point with depots. Every single map, you're going to have the potential at your 3rd command center to create choke points where the opponent will have to go through when they try Ling run-bys. Expect Ling run-bys, expect Mutalisk harassment back at your main base, and clear creep. I cannot encourage this enough. You take your stuff on the creep, and it's all balled up. He will sandwich it immediately, and you will die and lose your stuff. Killing creep is crazy valuable. Those tumors, while they don't cost a bunch, are important, super important for the Zerg. They offer detection. Now, yes, I am engaging on creep right now, but it's a timing that I can do so. He doesn't have the large Mutalisk count that he once had. I've got some Widowmines over here. Notice how I picked up at the last second when he was taking the Banelings in. Never be afraid to pick up and fly the Medivacs back. Keep the Medivacs alive. They're your tech. They're very important. Widowmine play requires, of course, more micro because you need to have those guys burrowed. When you play Widowmine play, the second factory tech lab gets the burrowing claws upgrade, which makes them dig underground super fast, which is hilarious. The Zerg's like, I'm gonna get you. You got my overlords. Oh, and watch the tears as Zergs whine. Do not listen to their whine about Widow Mines. Widow Mines are so not OP. It's so hysterical to hear Zergs complain about Widow Mines when they have Banelings. It's like, no. Don't even, Zerg. Your Banelings can burrow. Don't you even talk about my beautiful Widow Mines. You already got them nerfed once. I dare say that they didn't even need the nerf. Well, they probably did. But anyway, that's this game. I'll show you Hellbats in the next one. Alright, what is good? So here we are on a game of Habitation Station. This is from this season, from the Diamond Ladder. This guy's MMR was Diamond, even though he's a high plat player. It's a very decent game. I'm going to talk through it because in this game I think I opt for more Hellbats than I actually do for Widow Mines. It's one of the things that players have been doing more often, and I can explain to you why. So the replay you just saw was from previous seasons, and back then the Widow Mine was extremely powerful against Zerg. It had a wider activation radius than it does now. Last fall, they nerfed it. They nerfed the activation distance, and I believe they also nerfed the damage a bit. I'm not positive on that second part, but I do know that it got a bit of a nerf. So I'm going to turn the sound back on here and explain kind of what I'm doing right now with the build. So I want to know why did I build the CC down here? Well, if we check out my SCV, it's over here hanging at the gold. He ended up scouting both bases, both potential third locations, and the Zerg does not have a third by 6 minutes. This usually indicates some sort of all-in play. Notice he's getting Ling speed, and he's also got a Baneling nest down. So this could be right now a 2-base Ling Bane bust. It could also be Ling Bane pressure into a third base. It doesn't have to be that. So I just want to control more room at my ramp because early game, you don't have a ton of units to ward stuff off. Your power-up point comes a little bit later, closer to 8 to 11 minutes is when you're going to be really powering up, and 11 minutes to probably about 18 or 19 minutes is when this build is absolutely its strongest and when you need to get most of your work done. Now, I've seen pro players put 2 NG bays at the wall, which is actually a really good idea. I don't make a 100% choke with this CC down here, but it has a lot of HP, and it can be used as a nice big buffer if I've got a bunch of Banelings coming up my ramp and not a lot of Marines for the next little while. So let's go back to my perspective. Anyway, TvZ used to be last season all Marine, Marauder, Widowmine, Medevac. Now that they've buffed Hellbats are extremely good in this matchup, especially since we open with 6 Hellions. Now, the buff that they did is they got rid of the Transformation Servo upgrade, which was an upgrade that was required at a factory with a tech lab in order to transform Hellions into Hellbats. The reason it's so powerful is your Hellions, if you keep them alive further into the game, they can immediately turn into Hellbats, and they can be healed by medevacs. And Hellbats in this matchup are good at roasting drones if you want to do a drop to get the Zerg out of position, but they're really, really good at tanking Baneling hits. That's why they're so strong. Widow Mines, back in the day when they had this huge activation radius, were unbelievably strong if you had great splitting skills and you could lure the Zerg over Widow Mines. Now, Zergs have sort of since then gotten a little bit smarter with Widow Mines. They're not going to as often 1A over them, but in Gold and Platinum, most of your Zergs don't split at all. They just keep their Banelings and Lings on one hotkey in the attack move, and that keeps them nice and clumped up, which makes Widow Mines very viable. So yes, you can still play Widow Mines in this matchup, and I definitely would encourage you to try both styles, which is why I'm showing both of these replays right now. This is the more Hellbat heavy style, which I make a few really bad mistakes in the mid game, but I end up trading again better than him. So my initial 6 Hellions, I have 5 left now because I lost one. You do not want to lose these. If you lose these, you lose the game. These are your map control tools, and you have to micro them. You have to pay very close attention to them. So even though he's going to try and get us around here, I'm going to end up getting a lot of Ling kills out of the deal. The Ling kills aren't that big of a deal. It's just keeping map control and showing him that, hey, these are my units. You come out onto the field, I'm going to use them to A, roast your creep, or roast your lings as long as possible. You want to do this to deny any sort of map control that he has. It's also useful for knowing if a ling bane push was coming. At this point, since it's 9 minutes in the game, I can really safely assume that there's no all-in that's going to be coming. Even though I haven't confirmed the third, I've played enough TvZ to know that the bus should have come by now. He took the gold mineral. One of the things I did do is I will come back and try and confirm at his normal third base if he's taking it. But if he hasn't, I can just sort of assume. Zergs need to be a base up from Terran. That's very simple. They need to be a base up from Terran in this matchup. So I'm going to float out and take my third. I took my third 2 minutes later than I normally would because I was worried about that early Lingbane potential of pressure. I'm also getting missile turrets. Why? Lingbane Muta is the standard. Like, there's two standard ways that Zerg usually goes in this matchup, Lingbane Muta or Roach Hydralisk. Now, you can do Roach Baneling. That is, like, really powerful. There's a lot of Roach Bane timings, but since I have not seen any Roaches on the field, I'm not too worried at this point. Just powering up. Notice the time in the game. This is when we get a huge boost in minerals and we get a lot of production. We're already on 5 racks. You can max out with this build by like 14 minutes, and it also gives you enough money to reinforce because you'll be reinforcing a lot if you're trading with the Zerg. Once the armory finishes, if you are playing the Hellbat style, immediately get your Hellions into Hellbats. Why? Because your medevacs can heal them and they live a lot longer. That's why Hellbats are pretty awesome. You'll also want to do two things that I don't do in this game. The building group that you want to check out is 8 barracks, that's what you want to be on, and 2 factories. Always, even if you're playing the Hellbat style or if you're playing Widowmine style. The second factory you gets a tech lab. And the tech lab is, if you go for Hellbats, it's to get Blue Flame. If you go for Widowmines, it is to get the burrowing claws or whatever they're called, but that makes them like burrow underground exceptionally quickly. In this matchup, I think I end up getting, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 barracks. I'm on the right amount of barracks, but I don't get a second factory, which is a mistake. Certainly a mistake. You'll want to have that second factory because the upgrade for Blue Flame is super crucial, and it gives your Hellbats even a bigger boost, because right now, even Tage is saying Hellbats are OP. I would not be surprised if Hellbats get sort of a nerf soon. They did it to respond to the fact that Zerg was winning a lot against Terran, especially in this previous season of Code S. I tend to not think that, I don't think Terran is underpowered in this matchup whatsoever. I think it's just a difficult matchup that requires a ton of splitting from the Terran. So I'm not actually going to be able to get over to his base. He's going to do, he puts a lot of effort into keeping me away. And the first thing we're doing is clearing creep. This is self-explanatory. We clear the creep always because on creep he has such a huge advantage. He knows where we're at, and he's way faster on the creep than we are. And that's an issue for us. So he's going to get ready for his first push the next time I go into the creep. I'm continuing to build things. It's very hard to not supply block right about now, as I've shown before. And also important here, expand where it's safe, especially if Mutalisks are going to be coming. So this time I expand in my base for the 4th base to make sure that my reinforcements can defend it against Mutalisks. In that previous game, I took a naked 4th, and a better Zerg could have won the game right then and there. So here we go. Here comes the first push. I do not split very well. I'm showing you guys my embarrassing splits because I definitely think I've improved my splits over time, but I'm still quite bad at splitting. Notice how I'm running back to reinforcements, though. I'm still play it like I'm playing Widowmines, even though I'm playing Hellbats. He's going to waste a lot of Banelings on Hellbats, and Zerg is going to do that because they tend to just 1A move with their Banelings instead of target fire the crucial units down. You don't want to overlook getting Marauders. Marauders are very important, and you don't want to overlook getting the concussive shell upgrade, because if you can slow down those Banelings, huge advantage for you. As many engagements as you can get him to take off creep, you should do that, because it's going to be much easier to split against those units when they're off creep. So I trade okay in these few fights here. He shouldn't have gone in for that one, but I will trade very poorly in the next fight. So we can safely assume too that the mutas are coming, and there they are, just as I speak, in the main base. So I have a group of Marines already positioned in my main base ready to take care of this. And I also have missile turrets set up to take care of this. Just as Terran used drops to get the other player out of position, Mutalisks are the same thing. Mutalisks are trying to get your Marines from not pushing on his front door to get them back home defending. If he consistently is keeping your Marines at home, you're going to lose this matchup consistently. You need to have some missile turrets and you need to have some forces ready to go to defend it. I'm not saying you have to have a ton, but if he's keeping your whole army back home, you will lose your whole advantage of the 11-minute to 19-minute range in which your mid-game army is the best. The reason against Zerg we have to win before he gets into Ultralisks is because we are focusing heavy on really upgraded bio to do a lot of pressure in the mid-game to keep him on mid-tier units, which are Ling, Bane, Muta. But once he gets into a big enough Ultralisk force, it's like the mech army. If you do not have Marauders to deal with it, and if you do not have the proper unit count to deal with Ultralisks, it's going to be very, very hard. Ultralisks, fully upgraded Ultralisks, even with a full Marauder army, can be just darn right impossible to stop. So he should be letting me engage him on creep. He should be defending his 4th base. Instead, he's playing very aggressively. Huge mistake here. I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but it annoys the absolute face out of me. I have no bank right now, so I can't take a fight. I lifted up all my CCs, and I now have to get everybody mining again. I hate that feeling. I do it too often, and I shouldn't do it. My 4th base that I floated over there is going to become a planetary, and I basically have to buy time. The reason I'm doing this Doom Drop, it's kind of dangerous, but I have to buy time. If you look at my bank, it's really low, and it's going to be low for probably the next 30 seconds because I missed probably 30 to 45 seconds of mining time with that dumb lift up and getting everybody back on the gas. Since he took the gold base, though, this is a really easy place to get my units in, do a lot of drone damage, and keep his army at home. Because if he attacks me right now, I have no reinforcement capability. I need a little bit of time to get money. So I float in here, and I do my little 3 medevac drop. I'm going to get a lot of drone kills. I'm going to get a lot of Ling kills. I'm going to lose most of my army right here, but this was just sort of to buy time. I kept the medevacs alive. You have to keep the medevacs alive, because that's your tech in this game, other than the Hellbats. Dropping more mules, getting my bank, and trying to reinforce as quickly as possible before the next fight begins. If he were to let me engage him, what I would be doing over and over is attacking this area, this set of bases. So coming across, because there's a lot of nice choke points, there's a lot of splitting potential in this area. You like big open spots as Terran because we can split easily. He loves chokes because a choke is just easy for banelings to get in. So I can either continuously attack this base or continuously attack this base. My goal is not to get in here, because this is just, there's no reason. You can just over and over attack the Zergs for this far away base, and you'll be just fine. The other thing, too, is with drops. I don't drop in this game, but you fill up 1 or 2 medevacs, and the drop is purely to get some of his army out of position. That's all it is. That's what drops in this matchup are. It's not to roast a gajillion drones. It's to pull his Mutalisks back home, or to pull a portion of his army back home to keep him fearful and to keep his units not clumped up in one giant group. Now, as it turns out, I like to play Marine Split Challenge. My splitting is bad, but I don't think it's horrible, okay? It's horrible compared to, good players. But where I used to be with splitting, it's a lot better than what it was. So definitely go out there and play Marine Split Challenge. Now that I've reinforced, I've got a good idea where his army is. He builds so many Banelings, and a lot of Zergs will do this, okay? And this is your dream come true if the Zerg just mass builds Banelings, as long as you have Hellbats and Marauders. If you just have Marines and your splitting's not very good, it'll be frustrating because you'll lose a lot. But so many Zergs are oh, Marines, I'll just build a gajillion Banelings. This guy can't split. And then if you just sort of split and he keeps engaging off creep, which a lot of Zergs do, this is so greedy of him to do this, enormous engagement, and all of his troops get clumped up. I get a huge surround on him because of just a basic split, not a huge split. And that's the game right there, because he just traded way too ineffectively there. He could have been in a better position had he have waited for me to engage off creep, but forcing that engagement there was nail in the coffin. So now, if the opponent, the Zerg, goes for a standard 3-base opening, you can be very happy. That's your most optimal circumstances with this build. If he goes for Lingbane Muta, you can be very happy. Most optimal circumstances with this build. If he goes into a mass roach style of play, it becomes a game of math and a game of upgrades, because Marine Marauders, you need to have more and you need to have a bigger arc than the roaches to usually win. I find that playing against roaches is pretty easy in terms of this build and this matchup, because as long as you tend to get more, you're fine. Widow Mines don't do much against roaches, so I wouldn't recommend that. I'm talking about mid to late game roaches, not early game roaches. Early game roach all-ins are very hard to stop with this build because they're very hard to identify. Now, this build by no means is an auto-win kind of a build. This build requires a lot of micro, a lot of splitting, and a ton of multitasking. It also requires patience from you, the player, to not make bad engagements, and to also not engage on creep too early. It also requires you to sort of trick the Zerg into running over Widow Mines, which is kind of my favorite. I still love playing Widow Mine play, because nothing feels better than Zerg tears when they whine about Widow Mines when they've got Banelings. I don't get that. I don't understand. Good Terran's so cheap with their Widow Mines. Gosh, I can't believe they have these things that explode and do damage. Now, yeah, it stinks against early roaches. I have no way to really to change that. And the reason I'm teaching this is because it's like the standard. This is a super standard TvZ build, and the Reaper open into Hellions requires way more Reaper micro, way more early aggression. You have to get things done if you open with the 2 or 3 Reapers into Hellions. But I think it's important for you to also learn that build. This is your starting point because it'll teach you how to get to that standard TvZ building group and play it out. The Reaper opening is much safer against the Roach pressure, though, so just know that. Right now it's popular in Korea, and it's becoming less popular because right now Hellbat timings and 2-base Hellbat all-ins are very popular because Hellbats are very strong right now. But the norm now is kind of Pulse Reaper into Hellion style, which is very good too. It gets you a lot more early scouting data, but you have to be super good with your Reaper micro in the beginning. You can't lose those Reapers, and you need to get damage done with that opening. Like, no 2 bits and shakes about it. So keep that in mind, that against early roaches, getting tanks, getting more bunkers are vital, but scouting those early roaches is very hard unless you have SEV in the right place to see it coming, or unless you just have that great intuition and you don't confirm a third. Like, if you don't see a third by the right time, you smell the cheese is coming and you prepare for it, great. If you don't prepare for it and don't see it, it can lead to some frustrating losses. So just keep that in mind. Definitely down the road, I would, of course, encourage you to learn the Reaper in Hellion opening, which then turns into the exact same style of play as this mid-game style. But I think this is a really good place to start. Learning a 3cc open is great, and you'll start feeling a little bit more like a Zerg as you get this huge power boost in income and can reinforce your armies exceptionally quick. So I hope you all enjoy this build. Thank you for watching the TvZ video. If you have questions, as always, leave them below. You can send me replays, too, if you're having issues with this style of play. And I've been starting to, or I'm going to start reviewing subscriber replays on my second channel. I've already been doing it privately for a number of people for a few months now. So anyway, thanks for watching. Everybody have a good day. Good luck on the ladder. My name is BBK Dragoon, and go crush it out there.